is session 1 of Monsterhearts in the Dungeon of the Necromancer. This was originally going to be Dungeonhearts, but shit happened, so we're just running Monsterhearts in a fantasy setting. Today we have world building and character creation. So let's start by introducing characters. Chris, tell us about your character, the Cerberus.
Okay. The Dan is the Cerberus. He is basically the main sort of wandering guard dog that has set up shop in the dungeon prior to the Necromancer moving in. He is a burly, large, burly dog. He does have multiple heads, but not all of them are always visible. They sort of fade in and out, almost like kind of displacer beast heads. His eyes are his most telling feature. You can, even if it's completely dark and you can't see any of the rest of him, you can always see the fiery eyes in the background. That's kind of his monster lead-in. He's frustrated by the current situation. He is not happy with kind of what's been going on in the dungeon since the Necromancer moved in particular, and that's kind of his situation right now. He's basically a really, really grumpy dog that's sort of stomping through all the different levels of the dungeon, basically pacing back and forth.
All right, cool. Steven, tell us about your character, the Serpentine.
Lucian is a teenage serpent folk. He's part of the family that used to rule this dungeon in the Amethyst Vault before the Necromancer moved in and kicked them out. They are now all either dead or exiled to the furthest reaches of the dungeon, basically trying to stay out of the Necromancer's way. He recognizes them as a threat to his power, and if they come to his attention, he will likely just kill them. And their ambition is to defeat the Necromancer and reclaim the Amethyst Vault for their own.
All right, cool. Zachary, tell us about your character, the Sasquatch.
Yeah, I'm playing Stavros. I'm using the Sasquatch playbook, but Stavros is a Minotaur. He is quiet and tries to stay out of everyone's way. He came to the dungeon seeking refuge, and a dungeon is a pretty safe place for a Minotaur. They can get around pretty easily. They can hide out there very easily, but basically just tries to stay away from the other denizens of the dungeon, and is very quiet, is very reserved, but has a temper when he snaps. Yeah.
All right. So let's then establish what's it called? Backstory. Let's start with Dan. What's your first backstory question?
Someone had managed to slip past me, and somebody who's big trouble. The backstory language says a damned and wicked soul hiding among the pure. That's not exactly kind of what the dungeon seems to be, but He's tracked down who it is.
If I may suggest something, you're also like the Cerberus is like the guardian between two worlds. It could be like someone got out of the dungeon
and then came back. That I was thinking that too. I was thinking that
or not necessarily came back, or just left the dungeon and you're trying to get them back.
Right, and I think given how Dan feels about the current occupant of the Amethyst Vaults, I think he was actively trying to find Lucian or someone from Lucian's family to try and get someone back who could maybe go up against the Necromancer and reclaim the dungeon from him. And due to that situation, that would give me 2 strings on Lucian if Lucian's okay with that.
That's fine.
Okay, cool. You have 2 strings on Lucian, so you would type Lucian. I'm gonna do that for you just to show how.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, and then your second backstory.
Okay. The second part of the backstory is basically Dan just doesn't fit in. He's a wanderer in the dungeon. He hasn't settled down. He doesn't really make friends all that easily. So he starts out with a condition. And I want to say he's going to start out with the condition lonely.
Yeah, that works. In that case, let's go to our next character's backstory. Lucian.
I've been watching someone trying to learn from them what it means to be human. I think that I am fascinated by Stavros.
All right.
So I gain 2 strings on Stavros.
So I would put the 2 on the other cell, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's fine. And then your second backstory question.
Your family seeks to control your every move, and they will not be denied. The head of your family gains 2 strings on you.
And what is their name?
They are the Seth Principus.
Seth Principus?
Yes. Principus is sort of a title for the family head.
All right. Cool. And then we have Stavros. What is your questions? Your backstory questions?
Yeah. So I have 2. Mine are you've been a wallflower all your life, but someone finally noticed you. And that's the first one. And the second one is that someone makes fun of you. And my first thought for someone makes fun of you was Lucian, because I thought of Lucian as being like kind of a royalty, like a royal character, but I don't know if they're hanging out with me now and like trying to like observe me. Maybe not. What do you think, Steven?
I mean, it could be like I'm using sarcastic humor as a way to hide my feelings. So I could be interested in you and observing you, but also making fun of you.
I kind of like that. As long as Chris is okay with taking the one in which Dan noticed me.
I think that would honestly work pretty well with Dan, since he kind of wanders around a good bit. He would have probably been the first one who noticed you sort of moving into that portion of the dungeon you've taken a liking to.
Right. And I really like the idea of Lucian. Lucian has been like hanging out with Stavros and is like observing Stavros, and maybe just says like something offhanded once, maybe even as a joke, and Stavros just like really takes it like too hard, like doesn't get that it's a joke and just gets like really upset over it. So Dan, you get a string on me for noticing me, and Lucian, you give me a condition and I gain 2 strings on you.
How do you feel about intimidated?
I feel good about intimidated.
Okay.
Let me get some water. I'll be right back real quick. And next step is asking you about NPCs that populate the dungeon and maybe beyond.
Okay.
Be right back.
Cool.
All right, I'm back. Like I said, I was gonna be back quickly. So if you guys want to take a break, that's fine. It actually would give me some time to think of questions.
I'm okay with taking a break.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just enough time to make a cup of tea.
All right, cool. Zach, are you there?
Yep.
All right, I'm finishing the questions right now. All right. Here are my questions. To everyone. Who is the Necromancer and how has he pressed you into service? Give him 3 strings. So the Necromancer has 3 strings on everyone. Just saying. Let's start with Dan again.
I think the Necromancer has sort of pulled Dan in by basically feeding him just enough to kind of keep him on a short leash. Basically, the Necromancer, his whole thing is just violates Dan's entire personal code. Like, it's just broken and weird. But the Necromancer lets Dan hunt some of his zombies and skeleton creatures through the dungeon, and like specifically sets that up for Dan, so that Dan sort of feeds his need to guard that border between between life and death, and that's kind of where he's got him. There's just enough of a sort of a mystical buzz that Dan can get from doing that keeps him close.
Lucian?
I'd say the Necromancer, he controls the supply of food to the dungeon. He has Dan and his skeleton army guarding all of the exits. So everyone in the dungeon has to obey his commands or starve. It's sort of a loose control because you always beat up someone else and take their food, but basically, basically you work for him or you starve.
All right. And Stavros?
I think the Necromancer kind of got Stavros under his control by promising the safety. Whether or not the Necromancer can like actually provide that or not. Like, I think Stavros came to the dungeon after fleeing adventures in the outside world, and the Necromancer has promised him, like, yeah, you can stay here as long as you do everything I say and never question any of my orders. But as long as you stay here, you'll be safe. No one will come to get you, and I will never expel you.
Do we have a name for him? Or her, or them?
I think Goldus Nex.
Can you type that?
I can try. Where would you like me to enter it on the keeper? NPCs tag?
Yeah, NPCs tab where I am at right now. Okay. The next questions, okay, Goldust next. All right, the next few questions are about NPCs, so if you can refrain from answering like the who questions with player names, that'd be good. So the first one is for Stavros. Someone in the dungeon is hiding a valuable treasure from the Necromancer. Who is it and why?
I think it is. I'm trying to think of like who else would be in it. Oh, I think it's like an imp. I think there's an imp that I met early on when I got into the dungeon, and they're hiding a treasure. Did you say why are they hiding the treasure?
Yeah.
I don't think it's for any. Oh, you know what? I think this imp is hiding the treasure for like very mundane reasons. But I think the treasure might be more valuable than either of us know. It's certainly possible, or maybe it just might be like a large hoard, or maybe it's just like a large gem, and it just happens to be a large gem. And I don't know the imp's name, so I'm gonna grab a random book and grab a name.
All right. While you're answering that, Lucian, you've left the dungeon in exile and have come back. What has changed since you left, and who will you miss from the outside world?
Well, I'd say the main thing that's changed is that the Necromancer took over the dungeon while I was gone, and half of my family was killed.
Wait, I thought you left for exile like after he took over, or were you on vacation during that time, or what happened?
I had been sent as an envoy to a trading family on the coast.
All right.
And there was a human daughter, the daughter of the family named Corinne, who I started to have feelings for her. It was the first human that I had ever really spoken to who is my own age, and I was very confused because this is just completely outside my family's traditions for us to be for us to be intimate with an outsider like that.
Give her a name. Put it in the NPC tab. I will give any NPCs you make. You have one string of them, and they have one string of you, just to make things even. So, and don't forget to put that on your character sheet as well. Oh, Corinne, and then that's her name. Okay. And then finally, Dan, son of adventurers from the outside world just showed up. How did you dispatch them? Who survived?
I think when the adventurers first got into the dungeon, the first group of creatures they met up with were these small little creatures that hang from stalactites that actually are fire eaters. Basically, they devour the heat and light from fires. And so basically the adventurers burned through all their torches trying to get past those things. They just happened to pass underneath them and couldn't figure out what was happening. So they didn't come with nearly enough torches to get through that first part. So after that, they sort of huddled together, and Dan was in a really, really, really rotten mood and just basically tore into them as soon as he found them. One of the adventurers got away. It was actually an elf. She was able to scramble away because she actually managed to catch sight of Dan's eyes before he pounced. And she scrambled away and managed to make her way back out of the dungeon. And Dan,
or do you think you got
I think they were basically screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And Dan caught someone calling for let's say Eleander. I'll write it in on the.
Okay. All right. All right. So, so I think, and then you have one string on Eleander. You can, I think it's like I think it would be like a sense of you didn't chase her, so she owes me, but also she has a string on you. I guess I want to keep the like we can justify it however, but I wanted to do the I don't want to like have like oh this person has strings on like uneven strings, if that makes sense.
I got you.
All right, so let's start then by having uh Stavros, what is your niche in the dungeon?
I think my niche in the dungeon has developed into I know how to get around. Like I think it's this massive labyrinthine ecosystem, and I have it mapped out in my head. And I think that's kind of where I fit in. I don't think, which I guess kind of makes me maybe able to deliver messages between whatever groups are in the dungeon, and just kind of yeah, I think that's like an emissary between the groups.
All right, yeah, you see some you think adventurer, but she's desperate, running past you. She doesn't seem to notice you because hey, you're that playbook. So
Yeah, and I don't think I would engage. I don't think that's Stavros's jam. He promised the Necromancer that he would do whatever the Necromancer said, but the Necromancer didn't tell him to kill this elf. So if she doesn't notice him, Stavros is kind of just like I think hiding like in an enclave in like the corridor, and just kind of tries to not be seen and pretend that he didn't see her, so that he has like plausible deniability, just like I didn't see her, she didn't see me.
I think that might be a what's it called? Keep your cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
well, it's more keep your cool, not because she noticed you, but more keep your cool to
essentially defy, yeah.
Well, not just defy the order, but like this person is desperate. Do you want to help out, or do you feel anything? Like I want to ask you, like, what are you like? The Sasquatch normally is about helping people in the shadows with bullies, if I understand it correctly. So, do you feel any of that, or what's your deal? Is what I want to say or ask.
Yeah, I was thinking more as like more as just someone who is a wallflower, in the sense that they are trying to just not be seen, and not be not have to get involved.
Okay.
Like doesn't want to get involved, and especially I don't think Stavros wants to help this elf.
Okay.
Got driven into this dungeon by adventurers. I don't think has a lot of sympathy for the greater for the whatever civilized humanoids. So definitely doesn't want to help. I would be more inclined to help Cerberus if Cerberus was in trouble. But no, does not. Yeah, definitely just wants to avoid being seen.
All right. Then in that case, that is fine. There's no need to roll. She rushes past you, goes, finds herself in a dead end, and then like yells pretty much in frustration and desperation. Uh Lucian, you hear this yell. Where are you in the dungeon?
I'm I'm in a small. Okay, I'm in some small section of small storerooms that are mostly empty, and I hear I hear the yell, and I cautiously go looking to see what is happening.
You see the elf adventurer pretty much on a like at a dead end. She's young for an elf, so there's that. Uh, she is wholly unprepared for this. Seemingly, like she has no torches, no rations on her. Like she's probably gonna die soon without some help.
Yeah, okay. So I immediately recognize that she is not she is not from the dungeon. I say, "Quick, come with me."
All right. She looks at you and what?
I can hide you from the necromancer. Quick.
Uh, I think that's. I mean, I think that's keeping your cool in case someone hears you. Like you don't want to be too loud in case in case like you get caught and they have like you know. So I will fetch a roll for your party link because I haven't done that because I forgot about that. This is going to be this one. And I will put it in the NPC tab here. Uh, all right.
Okay. Okay, so that is a 10.
All right. So on a 10, uh, what are you afraid of? Or what? Or I'm guessing, what are you afraid of? Because that should have happened before you rolled.
Oh, I'm um I'm I am working on digging a tunnel to the surface in these storerooms, and I'm afraid that the necromancer will find the tunnel.
All right. And ask me a question about the situation.
Uh, the, the elf is how much how many people are after her? How much what's the extent of the pursuit?
As far as you know, no one. I don't think Dan is pursuing her. So she's just running down the dungeon like a maniac trying to find an exit.
Okay. Yeah, so I tell her, quick, come with me. I'll find you a place to hide. I'll hide you.
All right. Yeah, she goes with you.
Okay, and I bring her to one of the storerooms, not the one that has the tunnel, but one that's sort of out of the way where people generally don't have a reason to come.
All right.
I would like to have followed them. I think in secret.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's fine. There, like you're pretty good at being unnoticed, so I don't think
Right.
there's a role
Right.
there.
Right, and you're like you're following our scent, so you're not really in sight.
Yeah, I didn't want to, like, I just wanted to get to, like, not be involved with her, but once I saw Lucian come out and, like, start talking to her, it piqued my interest.
All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, maybe you didn't even see, us. So I didn't see you. You were around the corner and you heard my voice.
Yeah.
So I don't really know that you're tracking us. I
All
don't,
right.
I don't suspect that.
All right. So you. So let me get this straight. You tell her to hide in the closet.
Basically, I mean, a small storeroom. It's bigger than a closet, but
All right.
not huge.
So she hesitates and then says, "Will I be safe?"
As safe as any of us are.
"Mm, I'm fine." She hides in the storage room. Uh, then
Yes.
you see a scene of a group of creatures fighting each other over scraps of food. Do you interfere?
Hmm. I think so. I think Dan will toss one of the adventurers' corpses into the middle of them.
All right. They look at you. How much respect do you command over the creatures of the dungeon?
I would say Dan does stuff like this occasionally. Like he will break up fights by tossing the fights over resources by sharing out the stuff he gets. Because part of what he feeds off of is the necromancers, like undead creatures that. So he doesn't need quite as much food as the others, especially if you think about how big of a creature he is. So he does this stuff occasionally. So I think he's got a little bit of respect from most of the creatures in the dungeon. Some of them might not trust him, but they respect him.
Um, Tell me about one of them who doesn't like you at all.
I think one of the ones that just cannot stand Dan is actually one of the goblin leaders. He doesn't trust Dan at all because he at one point that goblin leader had tried to basically buck up to the necromancer, and the necromancer had basically sicked Dan on him,
Oh,
and Dan had basically bitten off one of his hands.
what's his name?
Let's see. You can plug it in there. I'm thinking his name would be. I'll say Grist. Grist.
All right. Um. So it just so happens that these are a group of goblins. You don't see Grist with them though, but they were goblins fighting over food. I think um the these aren't Grist people, but they're like one of the goblin folk around here. So they look at you and for briefly, and then they go take whatever piece they can get and leave. Um, and I think you have 2 strings on him
Okay.
because he is a because you bit his hand off. Grist, I mean. All right. Um, Going back to Lucian. I think, and Stavros actually, Lucian and Stavros. Uh so Stavros, you catch, I guess you catch glimpse of what's going on here. Lucian is hiding this elf
Mm-hmm.
in a storage room. What do you do?
I think I want to wait until Lucian like comes out, and then I want to confront Lucian. But if Lucian is still in there, I'm not sure if Lucian has left the elf girl yet.
Right. She hides in the storage room. What do you do, Lucian?
I want to talk to her. I ask her. I ask her where she came from and what she's doing in the dungeon.
We came here for money. We heard there was a necromancer here, and we were told to kill him for money. We're mercenaries.
There are others of you then?
I hope.
Enough?
I don't know. I don't know where. I don't know what happened to them. I just saw big glowing eyes, and I ran.
I see. Well, I'll try to find out. The Necromancer is an enemy of mine as well. If you can do anything against him, I will help you.
Okay. All right. Stavros, anything?
Uh,
Or
yeah.
or do you
Yeah.
stop? Or do
Okay.
you? Or is that where the conversation ends? So I can ask
Yeah,
Stavros.
I guess after that, I leave the room and maybe I bump into Stavros.
All right.
Yeah, I think as you're leaving that storeroom, Stavros like comes out of like the dark area of the dungeon, of the corridor, and like comes up to Lucian and says, "What are you doing?"
I turn and I sort of bristle, and it's like, this is none of your business, Stavros. Just keep quiet.
Is that rolling to shut someone down? I think so.
Okay. Okay. Roll with cold. So that's an 8.
So you choose one from the list, and they gave you a condition because you come across poorly.
I guess. Well, let's see. Do they have any strings on?
Yeah, I think
They
they have
a string
Yeah.
on me. So
they have two.
I'll take one forward on them,
All right.
and they give me a condition. So,
Yeah.
All right. So elaborate on how that happens. Like, what do you say to shut him down?
right. It's like I'm right. I mean I bristle and I say this is none of your business. Just stay out of this, Stavros. This it's better if you keep quiet. But,
And Stavros, how do you respond so that you give Lucian a condition?
I think Stavros kind of flinches a little bit, and then goes forward and says, "The Necromancer will kill you if he finds out that you're harboring enemies."
that's why I'm asking you to keep quiet.
I think the condition that Lucian takes is nervous, because he knows that this is very risky, and yeah, I think Stavros says, I won't tell him, but if he asks, I'm not going to lie to him.
Fine, just stay out of his way. She probably won't be here long anyway.
Yeah, I think Stavros like lets out like a low groan.
So, Lucian, you see coming from the hallway someone who is very loyal to the Necromancer. Who is it? Lucian?
Oh, sorry. I guess it's Grist.
I was hoping you gave me a new name.
Oh no, okay, that's fine. All right. That's Scourge. He's Hobgoblin Shaman.
All right. What? I think he has 2 strings on you.
Okay.
Specifically, because he knows he's suspicious that you're up to something, especially because you were part of the previous dynasty, I guess. So he's coming your way. What do you do?
I say in a low voice to I say in a low voice to Stavros, just act naturally, and I start talking to him about the shortage of cave mushrooms and how they're being over harvested in the dungeon, and I'm just having a conversation about how we need to find new sources of mushrooms, and I'm trying to make it seem like we've been we've been exploring the dungeon, looking for new growths of mushrooms.
I think
What are you afraid of? I think this is keep your cool, by the way.
Right. I'm afraid that Scourge will search the nearby rooms and find the elf for the tunnel.
All right. Roll to keep your cool then.
That's a 9.
All right. Stavros, do you wish to wait, can you aid in this? No, you can't. Okay, never mind then.
I can't aid or interfere.
Well, you can interfere because of like by pulling strings, but but this is Monsterhearts, so it's more PvP than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is gonna be how your actions will leave you vulnerable. You can choose to back down or go through with it. I think if you let him, if you start talking to Stavros, he's just gonna walk past you and start checking, because it's like he's not gonna talk to you, he's just gonna check anyways. So you're gonna have to pretty much directly engage and stop him from going there, I feel like.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll step into his path and say, "This is not your part of the dungeon, Scourge." Get back where you belong.
You are not the boss of me.
I think I think Stavros starts panicking, like seeing this interaction going on, and when I was reading the move from Musk and it said when you break a sweat, I that's probably more like physical activity, but I was kind of thinking like Stavros is starting to panic and is like starting to like break out into like a cold sweat.
Yeah, that's fine.
To like high level people like getting into an argument and knowing that there's an elf nearby and is like just starts panicking, feels this like tightness in his chest and it's just like, don't say anything, don't blow it.
All right, so C person tells you which person is aroused and give you a string on them. I think Scourge is going to be aroused. So you get a string on Scourge. And I think he starts gagging. Like,
Okay.
what the hell is that smell? What are you hiding, Lucian?
I don't like your tone, Scourge.
You're not the boss of me, I said.
Shall we test that?
Shut someone down.
Yeah, that's cool. That's an 11.
All right, cool. I think choose one from below.
I'm going to give them a condition of cowardly.
All right, let me add insert a column with conditions. Guess I forgot to do that. All right, cool. Yeah, he backs down and runs the fuck away. Stavros, what do you do? Or Stavros, you see all this happen. How do you react?
I think Stavros is like trying to catch their breath. It's just like so scared and so relieved that Scourge kind of just turned and left. And yeah, I think turns to Lucian and is like, I can't, I'm not gonna be able to lie to the Necromancer. I can't do it. I'm not gonna be able to do it.
Look, Stavros. Here in the dungeon, you've got to stand up to people. You need to be brave. You need to be bold, or they will eat you alive. I mean, not necessarily literally. Sometimes that happens too, but they will just walk all over you if you let them. You need to stand up to people. If you stand up to people, they'll back down. You're a big guy. You can handle yourself. Nobody's gonna start a fight with you, not without a really good reason.
So it's kind of like nods and like takes a few deep breaths. I was like, okay, all right, yeah, right, okay, stand up for myself, right, okay.
Let's go back to Dan. Your patrol continues, and nothing of note. When you report back to the Necromancer, how do you do that?
I think the way Dan reports back is that when he finishes up a patrol, he has a I say he says a word to one of the various undead the necromancer has wandering around the tunnels, and that word activates a like a sort of magic mouth spell directly to the necromancer to basically inform him of whatever happened on the patrol.
So let's have that conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
Then not much happened. Had a party of adventurers come in. They didn't get far. I ate one of them. The goblins ate one of them.
Good.
Do you specifically not tell him that one escaped?
Yeah, that's what Dan said. So yeah.
Nice.
So is that trying to keep your goal? I think maybe.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean,
Yeah.
number
Okay.
one, I mean, he doesn't really like the necromancer anyway, so he's not predisposed to be helpful.
All right. So
but
what are you afraid of happening?
I think at this point, Dan would not want the necromancer to have him go sniffing around and hunting the remaining adventurer. Like, he's just not interested in doing that. The only reason he really attacked them at all is just because he was pissed off and they were there.
Okay.
Like, they had violated the sanctity of his dungeon. That's enough to trigger him, trigger his aggressive behavior to guard his boundaries. So, so let me roll keep your cool. And if I remember right, that's with cold, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense because it says cold.
Okay.
And it's keep your
cool. I'm always, some of these are a little odd names, so I always try to be careful.
That's true. All right.
Okay, 7 plus cold for. Okay, jump back up to the top so I can read my. I think cold is 2. Yep. So 9.
All right. So that's 9. I think. I think the necromancer would like. I think the issue is that you would have to actually lie to him because he's gonna press for information. And if you lie to him, that might have repercussions later if he does find out.
Gotcha.
So what do you do?
If the necromancer, asks a few more questions about the party, Dan's going to sort of hedge and say that he saw the adventurers and basically focus on the adventurers he attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to basically, in his head at least, he sectioned off the 2 he attacked and he didn't pay any attention to whatever the other one did.
All right.
So that's how he's focusing that lie. So he is going to lie if it comes to the necromancer directly asking, well, how many of them were there? He's going to say stuff like, I got, I found 2, stuff like that.
Okay.
So he's not going to specifically say there were only 2 adventurers ever. He's going to say, I got 2.
Okay.
That
makes sense.
I gave one to some goblins, and I ate the other one.
Okay. So for apart from that, necromancer is disinterested. Cuts the connection.
Okay.
What do you do now?
I think what Dan is going to do now is, now that he's done with his patrol, I think he's just going to, sort of wander to try and find some relatively quiet place to rest a little bit. As much as he loves to prowl around the dungeon, he's also getting towards the end of his patrol cycle, so he's going to want to get somewhere and take a quick rest.
All right.
No, I would suggest this. I think where you would normally want your guard dog to rest is probably someplace where even by resting he guards things. So maybe around the storeroom areas.
Yeah, I was thinking that. So yeah, you're going that direction. Lucian and Stavros, are you headed elsewhere, or are you staying in the storage room?
I'm headed elsewhere because I'm trying to. I want to find out about the elf's companions. I want to find out what the gossip in the dungeon is, because I want to see if her companions are still alive.
Okay, so you see Dan on the way.
I think I went with Lucian. Yeah.
All right.
So I would like to be there as well.
Oh yeah, you all meet up. What do you do?
Hello, Dan. Has anything interesting going on?
Now, a couple of adventurers came in.
Ah. How'd they do?
Not very well. One of his heads materializes briefly and spits out like a small bit of armor.
Huh.
Stavros is heart pounding, so nervous, doesn't know what Lucian's gonna say.
Ah, so did you kill both of them or just the one?
No, both of them are dead.
Oh, that's a good job, I guess.
Have the three of us hung out before? Do we know where Dan is a guard dog. Do we know where his allegiances lie?
I would think if since I think with the things we went through with strings, I think we probably actually know enough about each other. You guys basically know, Dan is not big on the necromancer. He's not big on necromancy in general. He doesn't like that there's now all these zombie things, and he does occasionally kill an occasional skeleton or zombie, just wandering past it and just whomp kills it because he just can't stand those things.
Yeah, I mean it's possible that maybe I've known Dan since he was a puppy.
Oh yeah, because your family
right
in charge of the dungeon first, so
yeah. So we're right. So we're probably on pretty good terms, although now your allegiances have shifted.
Yeah, but and like I said, you can tell there's basically still some hostility there between from him toward the necromancer, but it's always just hostility. He's
right.
It's not like he's going to fight the necromancer over it because in Dan's head at least it's not really worth it right now.
Right.
He would not be unhappy if there wasn't a necromancer. You've gotten that impression.
Right. Right. Okay. So I scratch him behind the ears and I give him a little treat. I give him a couple of goblin toes that I've saved for him.
Dan slurps those up happily, and he nuzzles he nuzzles your hand and said, "Oh, my patrol's up. I'm gonna go take a nap in my usual spot."
Good boy.
And let me ask this: did you, when you were leading the elf off, do you think that Lucian actually touched her? like touched her on the back, pushed her into the room, anything like that?
I don't think I did.
Okay. So her scent wouldn't necessarily be on you then.
Right.
So I might smell that she probably ran this way, but I wouldn't be able to tell that you had had any contact with her. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe if you sniffed me carefully, you might be able to tell. But
well, that's that weird thing. That's what I'm thinking. If like most of the time, if you would have to have touched her to have some of her scent rub off on you, and if you didn't touch her, then I can just tell, oh, she went this way, but you would not necessarily have been this way when she came here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So like he probably knows she's run this way somewhere. He's you can detect that much.
Right. There's also the overwhelming stench of Stavros in
right. That would have drowned out Eddie.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he sweat. When he had a sweat attack, so the whole corridor kind of reeks a little bit. So probably as Dan is kind of going into that corridor as you guys are walking out of it, he like stops for a second and like does that dog snort?
Yeah.
All right.
And Dan recognizes that, and he turns to Stavros. It's like, really?
I'm sorry. Sorry.
I sleep in here.
Yeah, I got nervous. Sorry. I can't. Sorry. Stavros is just like, oh, I'm sorry. Like Stavros has a nervous tick where he holds onto his own horns and he's just like, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's cute. Yeah, I think Dan's routine is pretty much the patrol. Lucian's routine.
Yeah, I think it's time for me to head back towards my family, towards the remnants of the Amethyst Court.
And before I go to that scene, I guess let's go to what is Stavros' usual routine?
I think Stavros, I don't want to step on Dan's toes, but I think Stavros, as a Minotaur, also is kind of prone to wandering around the halls, but I think for a very different purpose. Stavros is just kind of compelled to move, and is just constantly walking the halls, but very much doesn't want to interact with, especially not adventurers. Definitely does not want to act as a guard. But I think that kind of plays into that sort of messenger kind of niche that they've fallen into. Just constant, just wandering, grazing, picking cave mushrooms and gnawing on them as he wanders the halls. I think that's Stavros' routine.
All right, so I think we are gonna do the scene with Lucian's family, and then we're gonna call it off if that's okay. All right,
okay.
So let's do that. Lucian. So you're with your father, you said, right? Seth? Or is he just the patriarch?
Oh, he's the patriarch. He could be my father. I'm like one of the youngest children.
All right, cool. So where are they now?
They are. They are in the. Let's see, the limestone pools. It's an off branch of the dungeon that has some hot water pools. It was used as sort of, hot hot baths, but since we've been driven out of the court, we've basically set up camp there. That's where the remaining lizard folk are living. The serpent folk are living.
All right. So so all right. Okay. So so you see Seth there, and he says, Lucian, uh how is the progress on the tunnels?
It progresses, Father. It will be at least another 2 weeks before we reach the surface.
Very well. And anything else happen?
A party of adventurers entered the dungeon seeking to kill the Necromancer. They seem to have been grossly unprepared. Dan killed 2 of them, the third fled.
Very well. And he looks at you and says, what? And that is all. Very well. All right. I have I unfortunately the tunnels will have to wait. There are more pressing matters at hand.
As Father, we cannot delay the tunnels. The tunnels are our only hope for defeating the Necromancer. As long as he controls the food, we cannot gain allies.
There is another way, and if we do not move quickly, that opportunity will be lost.
I attend, Father.
So you will find this rod of mirror. So it is an artifact that the Necromancer fears, rightfully so. It is a very powerful artifact of necromancy. It will undo the armies of the Necromancer. And we have reason to believe that it is here in the dungeon.
I had heard stories of the rod, but I thought it was the. I hadn't known that it still existed. Do you know in whose possession it is?
I know Bellamy, the imp, has a piece of it. It's been destroyed, but it can be put back together with some of our techniques.
I will look for Bellamy, Father. I will see if I can persuade her to show us the piece of the rod.
Very well.
And perhaps it will lead us to the other pieces.
Do that, my son. And we'll cut from there. And we will thank you for playing. Thank you for
Okay.
participating.
Thank you
I
for
will
having me.
stop. I will stop the broadcast